Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be taking a look at this album here. It's Paul McCartney and Wings one. It's their album London Town. So I'll just be doing the usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. So this was the 8th album by Wings, released on the 31st of March in 1978. Now initially the band had planned to tour America, however those plans were halted when Linda got pregnant with the McCartney's third child, James. Now it was quite an interesting one to make this album because two members of Wings left during the making of it, both Joe English and Jimmy McCulloch, although they do appear on the album, they weren't on the photograph or any promotional material for it. They did, I think they still got credited though, but certainly any trace of them was kind of wiped out. Now very quickly McCartney did get a new lineup of Wings together, maybe with the intention of touring Steve Holley and Lawrence Juba joined shortly after the album was released. Now, it was recorded in numerous locations, including London's Abbey Road studios, and probably more notably, they rented out a couple of yachts around the Virgin Isles, and basically set up a recording studio there. One of the boats they were on was called Wanderlust, which of course inspired a later McCartney song. Now, preceding the album was a very important single for McCartney, recorded it during these sessions was Mull of Kintyre here, and although it doesn't appear on the album, this was one of McCartney's biggest hits. It became the biggest selling single in the UK until 1984, and still remains the largest selling non-charity single. So yeah, very noteworthy release here, especially in the UK, and a real shame that it didn't make it on to the actual album. Now commercially, the album did do well enough for a Paul McCartney release, whether it wasn't the chart chopper blockbuster album what Band on Their Own or Wings at the Speed of Sound could be. It reached number 4 in the UK and number 2 in America. But yeah, I said broke McCartney's run off number 1 albums, which I think he'd had since Red Rose Speedway or something. And critically the response was slightly mixed. McCartney was never the critics' darling in the 70s, and a lot of people were sort of very critical of this album. Let's say it was very safe, very soft, very sort of typical McCartney fluff really. But anyway, I will just show you my vinyl copy of it here. I do really like the packaging to this album. I think it's got a nice cover, and the back cover nicely contrasts it there, which is really cool. Also you get, there's no gatefold to this one though, but you do get a really nice poster as well, really big poster as well actually. So one side is this portrait shot of Wings there, which is really good actually. I think I had that on my wall a few years back, and this sort of collage here from the the album sessions, all the boats and other various shots and stuff. So yeah, that's really cool. Again, not many albums these days come with posters. Really was a kind of 70s novelty. And then you get the inner sleeve here, which just has the lyrics on it there, and these sort of London Town kind of design there, which is really nice. And the label itself also is really good, again kind of continuing the sort of the contrasting theme there. So overall the artwork I think is really, really good. But anyway, it's the music what matters, so I will go over each of the album's tracks now. I'll score each track out of 10, and they use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album.
Maybe exaggerates the trouble and the strife.
So it kicks off with the title track, London Town, which is a song which I have always liked. I think it's got a really strong melody on it, really nice musical arrangement, which really builds up naturally. Starts off quite quiet, with this this Fender Rhodes piano, electric piano thing, but then we get some really nice lush orchestration, plus a brilliant guitar solo halfway through the track. Lyrically, it's kind of about observing sort of ordinary people of London, and yeah, while it's no Waterloo Sunset, it is a fun song I think. It was taken as the 3rd single from the album, and it was a bit of a disappointment commercial wise. Reached only number 39 in America and number 60 here in the UK. It does have quite a good wee music video to it though, and I would give it overall a 9 out of 10. Really like the track London Town. And then the next song keeps up like the pace like off the album. It is Cafe on the Left Bank, which is a more kind of like upbeat like pop song, and I have always had a lot of time for this song. I really like the musical like arrangement on it, like kind of like again like it's like some sort of like organ riff like what opens the song. It just sounds so good. It kind of like lyrically like sets the scene like off like a like Parisian cafe. However, musically like it's not really sort of French like influence like at all. Just a solid kind of like new wave like rocker. Could almost like imagine like say a band like Squeeze like doing like a song like this. You've also got great guitar playing from Jimmy McCulloch on it as well. Like which a guy like always like just assumes that was McCartney like, but no, like, Jimmy McCulloch really like rocking out like on this one here. And yeah, I just think it's a really underrated, underappreciated song there. So Cafe on the Left Bank would get a 9 out of 10.
I'm carrying.
Next up is I'm Carrying, which is a nice sort of gentle acoustic like love song really. It's quite vague like lyrically, like he doesn't really like give like too much away like in the lyrics. It kind of he just sort of sings like I'm carrying something for you kind of thing. It doesn't mean much I don't think, but it sounds nice. And like musically like it sounds quite good as well. He's using the Godley and Creme invention, the gizmo, like to great effects like on like this one. Like again, it just gives it a kind of slightly cold kind of feeling to it. Like it's not there's a slight unease like in like this song like as well. And like apparently like George Harrison as well like was quite a fan like of like this song, like saying that like he thought that like it was like a really good quality like McCartney song. And like yeah, while it's not particularly like noteworthy, it is really nice like when it's on. So I'm Carrying would get an 8 out of 10. Next up is called Backwards Traveller, which I think is a really good song here. And well, I say a song, it's more of a real sort of snippet. It's only on for, was it 1 minute and 7 seconds, it says here like on the back. But I think that this song would have a great potential if we had kind of fleshed it out like a little bit, like maybe wrote like some more lyrics to it. Because again, I think the bass just really pumps like on like the song. You've got like good sort of like creative lyrics on it, and just a great production, like a great whole sound to this one here. It's just, for me, it's over far too quickly. But I would still give it like an 8 out of 10 because I do again really like enjoy it like when it's on. It for me is it's probably like one of like the highlights like on the album, like I would say. But yeah, like just wish that like there's a bit more to it. And then that kind of seizes into like a instrumental piece called Cufflink, which is a kind of like, it's a real sort of precursor to the McCartney 2 album. It's slightly dated example like of like a sort of like an early like synthesizer like experiment. I mean, there's not too much substance here, but it's not bad like when it's on. I mean, there is something kind of like fun like and like unique about it. Like it's not really like what like you would maybe like expect like on like a like Wings album like this one here. It's just a kind of like, yeah, like it is quite light and fluffy, but it is also kind of quirky like and like experimental as well. So yeah, Cufflink would get a 6 out of 10 from me. Next track up is called Children, which is the first of 2 Denny Lane songs like on the album, like which he sings, and it's one of my least favourites on the album. It's a song I've never really had that much time for. He tries to be kind of like Syd Barrett-y, kind of like evoking like the innocence like of like childhood and like sort of like fairies like in like a forest, like that kind of thing, but it just doesn't really work for me. I mean, it's not terrible, and like I'm glad it's not too long either. So it was 2 minutes 20 seconds here, so it's not too bad. It's just yeah, like a bit of filler like on the album for me. Can only really give it a 5 out of 10, like I'm afraid. Next song up is Girlfriend, which is a pretty good song like this one here. Like again, it's never been a huge favourite of mine, but I do kind of like it. I mean, it's probably one of the first examples like I can think of like McCartney like using his like sort of like his very high like falsetto vocals. Like he would like later sort of like go back to this style like on the song So Bad. And like I read that like originally like he wrote this song like for Michael Jackson like a few years like prior like to like the album like coming out. However, like it would be like later that Jackson like would like record this song for his album Off the Wall, and like yeah, like it's maybe a bit sugary sweet kind of thing, like sort of like especially like the kind of like the verses like and chorus bit, but the bridge is quite good. Again, you've got a really good like guitar solo on it. Kind of like takes a few like unexpected twists and turns like this song like throughout like it's like 4 minutes 31 seconds running time. But yeah, it's not a bad song there, so I would give it a 7 out of 10 for Girlfriend. The next one up is called I've Had Enough, which closes off side one, and this is a kind of the most sort of like rocking song on the album, I would say. It's got a really good riff on it, really good sort of like strong like raspy vocals like from McCartney. However, lyrically it is a little bit weak. He's kind of just sort of singing like about being like fed up like with like a woman, kind of like sort of like a lot of like blues like cliches like on this one really. It was issued though as the second single from the album, and again it didn't do too great. Reached number 25 in America, but only number 42 here in the UK. So yeah, quite a like weak showing there, like for like I've Had Enough, which again, like it's not a bad song, like it's a serviceable like so like new wave like rocker, but like yeah, like doesn't really do much for me. But then we flip over to side 2 and get the most popular song on the album, the classic With a Little Luck, which is, yeah, a brilliant song. This one here is kind of like, it's like peak McCartney, like this one, like I would say. And like again, it shows Wings' sort of like, musical development. They're going in quite a different direction, like from the last couple of albums, like on this one, with a real sort of like synth-heavy song. And it's something like which like they maybe like wouldn't have done like if like they like had like intended like to tour like this album, because a song like this really would have been very difficult like to like reproduce live. I think it's one like which McCartney like has never even like attempted to do live, and like yeah, like you kind of see why, because it is very much a studio creation, this one here. And I would say as well, it sounds kind of ahead like of its time like a little bit. It sounds almost more like an 80s song like in some ways, because kind of like at this point like synthesizers like were like very rarely being used like as like the foundation like off like a whole like pop song. They were more kind of like avant-garde and sort of like Kraftwerk kind of stuff. So this one here, like it is McCartney kind of like trying something a bit different, and like it does really work. I think as well you've got a cracking vocal performance like on it as well, like, especially like towards the end where he's really just like belting it out. He's on like he's like yeah, like firing like on all cylinders like in like the vocal department. And like yeah, like I would say this album version, maybe because I'm a tad too long. I mean, sometimes I can get really into like the instrumental like interlude on it just to like lose myself, but then like other times it's a bit like when's this like gonna be over sort of thing. But it is still a classic single, was a #1 hit for him like in like America, got to number 5 here in the UK, and like yeah, like I think is worthy of a 10 out of 10 there. And then we kind of contrast that with one of McCartney's worst songs. It's Famous Groupies, and it is a kind of just a sort of silly novelty song, this one here, like one of like these sort of like these real sort of throwaway songs like which like he occasionally likes to chuck on his albums. Lyrically, it's kind of like a silly kind of story song like about like a group of like groupies I could follow like this band about, and I think yeah, would have really worked better like as like a B-side. Like I'm afraid it doesn't really add much to the album. So yeah, like I would give that one a 3 out of 10. But then thankfully we get a pretty good song after that called Deliver Your Children, which is the second Denny Lane song on the album, and this one thankfully like is a lot better than his other one. It's like kind of like an upbeat like acoustic folk song, really catchy song, great like harmonies on it as well, like McCartney kind of like duets like with him, and again the vocals do go really like well together. Lyrically it's quite Dylan-esque, like quite abstract, quite so like nonsensical, but I think it really works, and like yeah, like it is like quite a good song there, so that one would get an 8 out of 10. Next up is called Name and Address, which is a fun, upbeat rocker. I like the production like on this one. It sounds kind of like raw, like kind of like very like rough around the edges, but I think it really works. It was a few years kind of before like that whole like rockabilly revival thing like went on like with bands like Rockpile and that. Like this song like would have maybe like been like a hit, like had it been like released like a few years like later, like whether like as it was never like even considered like for a single, like to like be honest. And like yeah, like was maybe intended like as a tribute like to Elvis Presley, like who had died like a year earlier, but like I'm not sure like where like it fits in like with like them like recording like the song. But yeah, it really works well like this one here. Like I would give it a 7 out of 10. It's maybe one like which I've kind of has gone down a bit like in like my estimation. Used to love the song like when like I was like really young, like, but yeah, now we'll give it a 7 out of 10. And then like if like that last song has kind of maybe gone down like for me, like this song and this next song has has absolutely grown on me is Don't Let It Bring You Down, which I think is a really strong song, this one here. Again, I never used to care for it. It was kind of always a bit of like a sleeper, but there's just something about it. It kind of the way it sort of develops, it kind of starts very sort of calm, very relaxing piece, like into something like with a bit more kind of tension, like a bit more angst like in it. And like I love McCartney's sort of contrasting vocals. He kind of starts singing it really low, really deep, like in like his vocal register, like then he kind of immediately shifts like to like his high falsetto. Again, it might seem jarring, but I think that it really works and like really gives it like a unique flavour. It was included on the recent compilation Pure McCartney. I think only on like the full CD set, but definitely like shining some light there, like on like an underappreciated gem. So yeah, Don't Let It Bring You Down would get a 9 out of 10 from me. And then we finish the album with a song which again divides a lot of people, but I rather like it. It is Morse, Moose and the Grey Goose, which is kind of classic, like wacky, like Macca, this one. I love the kind of different sections like of it. It's kind of like Uncle Albert, like Admiral Halsey kind of thing, like where it's kind of all over the place. A real sort of like scattershot like off like a song. I really like the piano riff like on it. Again, that's really good. Lyrically, like it's about like a troubled ship. It's kind of akin to the song Despite Repeated Warnings, like off like the last album Egypt Station. And like yeah, like again, I just think it really ends the album like with a bang, like with a kind of like a real sort of like bombastic big like production number, kind of similar to like 1985 off Band on the Run. And like yeah, like while it maybe isn't quite as good as that song, I think it still rounds off things pretty well. Like kind of like a like a bit odd, but kind of like typical McCartney there. So yeah, that one would get an 8 out of 10.
People said she'd never float a one night wait.
Okay, so overall this album would score 75%. So kind of like at like the time, I guess this probably would have been what a lot of people would have expected like from McCartney. It's nothing groundbreaking, this album, but it is a very melodic record, very pleasing album, but again maybe lacking in a lot of lyrical substance. But in saying that though, it is also quite an odd album. It's quite a sort of scatterpot like of different styles. Like you kind of like on one hand you've got the kind of like folkier, like sort of like soft rock stuff, but then you've also got more like experimental things like Cufflink and like Morse and the Grey Goose, things that would have been well out of place like on like At the Speed of Sound, like on Venus and Mars. And it is a long record as well to get through it. It's about 50 minutes this one here, and like I would say like as well, like it was a pity that these two songs like didn't make it like onto the album. Like again, like if you put those on, like you would have pretty much had like a double album. But like yeah, like it is still got a lot of variety like on it. It's maybe just a little bit too long, like I maybe cut out a couple of tracks like Children and Famous Groupies for me, and like then you would have a pretty solid, pretty cohesive album, I would say. Now I suppose that this did kind of represent a bit of like a start like off like a commercial decline like for like McCartney. Like although like he was still having like #1 hit singles, like his records like weren't selling like as well like as like they used to do. And like while Wings would make one more album like Back to the Egg, like that one like didn't do like anywhere near like as well as this one did. And like kind of compared to that album, like I always said that like I tend to prefer like Back to the Egg. I think it's got stronger songs in it, but like when I actually compared like my scores, like that one like only got like 72%. So yeah, as it turns out, like I prefer London Town. But yeah, an underrated record here, like one like which I think gets like overlooked like too often. Like as with a lot of like McCartney's work, yeah, there are some like real like strong moments on it. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed my review, and I will see you all next time for the next video then. Goodbye.